Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Sunday, April 9th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 147 days, the game against Michigan in 231 days, and I guess we can add the Ohio State spring game is in 6 days. Buckeyes getting ready to wind up spring practice this week. They are through 11 practices right now. We'll finish up with practice number 15 on Saturday. Should be a lovely day at Ohio Stadium. We will be out there. If you are out there and you see us, please come say hi. Always enjoy getting to meet you guys in person. Get to talk to you a little more than we do on YouTube because it tends to be a one-way conversation on YouTube and on podcasts. So always nice to get the extra chance to meet some of you guys and talk to you and all that. So that will take care of the housekeeping on the spring game. Let's talk instead about some of the stuff that we've already learned during spring practice. On Friday's morning show, I talked to Tony Gerdeman about 5 guys on the offensive side of the ball who we felt had maybe really taken a leap this spring or taken a big step forward this spring or made the most of their opportunities this spring. Today we're talking about defense, and we had 5 names, and then we thought, well, I really need to do 6 guys, so it's going to be like 5 asterisk, and you're going to get a little bonus coverage there as well with a 6th guy we're going to be talking about today. Tony, let's start up front, and let's start with Kenyatta Jackson Jr. He is someone who is a second-year defensive end. It feels like Ohio State came into the spring with 3 defensive ends they felt pretty good about, and based on what we've seen and what we've heard, they might be leaving the spring feeling pretty good about Kenyatta Jackson as well.
Yeah, that was one of the questions we had. Who was going to step up and be that 4th defensive end? And would it have to be maybe somebody like Mitchell Melton at the Jack that would have to wait until fall camp? But pretty much from day one, Kenyatta Jackson has been getting after the quarterback and has gotten bigger, gotten stronger. The thing that I'm watching or want to watch more of is Larry Johnson has always said Kenyatta Jackson is a talented pass rusher, but it's the rest of the game that he has to continue to work at. And still one of the plays that I remember from the very first scrimmage was a speed option his way where the ball was pitched and he had an arm on, he had a hand on, I think, Chip Trayanum's tearaway shirt that just kept getting longer and longer as Chip Trayanum got further and further away. But it's that kind of thing, defending the edge, defending the run, that will really get Kenyatta Jackson consistent play. But the pass rushing that he's done right now has been, I think it's stood out, and it doesn't take you long and to watch and see him do something. And I think everybody that has been to practice this spring for any length of time has walked away saying that 97 is a guy to watch out for.
Yeah, you want to have the guy who has at least one really outstanding trait, something that really jumps out to you. And then, the other stuff can kind of follow. But if you can really jump out in one area, that's something that they can make a use of you either situationally or, just give you some kind of a role just based off of that alone. And it feels like the pass rushing there might be kind of the carrying tool for Kenyatta Jackson as he rounds out the rest of his game. But definitely someone who is further up the depth chart or more of a sure thing maybe on the depth chart than we would have said a couple weeks ago. So yes, there is number 1 on our list. Number 2, Tony, CJ Hicks. He is not going to probably start this fall, doesn't sound like, but he's also someone who has really made the most of his opportunities this spring. No Tommy Eichenberg for the whole spring. Steel Chambers got banged up this week. Nothing super serious, but now all of a sudden, ta-da, there are first-team reps available during practice. We saw CJ Hicks taking those reps on Friday, and it also sounds, based on what Jim Knowles has said, like there might be a different role for him as well as they sort of roll out that jack position later on in the year.
Yeah, with CJ or with Steel Chambers going down a little bit, I'm guessing Jim Knowles isn't super upset about that because they can get more and more reps for CJ Hicks to see how they want to use him, whether they can use him, because they're still trying to figure out who they can trust in this defense. But he's been a guy when he's working with the twos. We've seen him get into the backfield and disrupt a play, disrupt a handoff, make the quarterback make a read decision where it looked like he used to look in high school, where he's in the backfield almost immediately. He's done that a couple of times in spring that I've seen, and now getting to play with the ones and having to, you've got to step up. You're with the ones. During red zone action on Friday, saw him get beat by Cade Stover for a touchdown. That's a Cade Stover, a veteran one of the best tight ends in the nation. That's a little lesson for CJ Hicks, a guy who believes he can cover well. Other people believe he can cover well, has a coverage background in high school, a very talented athlete. But these are opportunities against the best for him to grow. And you get beat once in spring. What did you do wrong? You fix it, try it again, see what happens. And so the opportunities he's getting in spring will allow, I think, Jim Knowles to do even more with him, perhaps as a jack, perhaps as a situational linebacker. And again, linebacker is very tough because you've got Steel Chambers, you've got Tommy Eichenberg, you've got Cody Simon as your three. So if they can find other ways that don't interfere with those three to get CJ Hicks on the field, that's something you gotta look for.
And a lot of that is just, has CJ Hicks demonstrated that he has to be on the field? You have to kind of take that decision away from the coaches and make it not, should we play this guy? But hey, this is someone, we've got to find a role for him. We've heard them talk about Sonny Styles in that way in the past, and it feels like CJ Hicks is probably working his way towards that if he hasn't gotten there already. Next up at corner, we're going to talk about Davison Igbinosun. He came in from Ole Miss. He was a starter last year for Ole Miss, started 9 or 10 games last year for the Rebels, and then transferred to Ohio State and came into the spring feeling like, yeah, this is probably someone who's going to have some kind of a role on the team this fall. But after watching him and seeing him and just a bigger, taller, longer guy than a lot of the other folks they have in the corner room, he's still not working with the ones, at least on a consistent basis, but it sure feels like he has worked his way into being at least a rotational player there at the very least this fall.
Yeah, I won't be surprised at all to see him start games, a game, in that type of 3-man rotation if there is, or just see him out there when the games are on the line, because he has come in and he has played well. Doesn't mean he's consistently running with the ones. We saw him quite a bit with the twos, but I think that's more of a statement about the ones than it is about Igbinosun, who has only come in and made plays and impressed his coaches with his size and his length. And I keep going back to the first day of spring practice, when you walk into the Woody and I see a number 20 and working with the corners, and I immediately, 20 being Sonny Styles' old number, Davison Igbinosun's new number, and not clicking that wasn't Sonny Styles, because he stood out so much taller than everybody else at his position. And he's just a big, long guy. And it allows him to, you can run zone with him because he can cover ground, or you can run man with him because he can get your hands on you and make life difficult for you to get away from him. So I think a good get from the portal. And as we know, Buckeyes don't really strike out in the portal.
No, the track record there has been really, really good over the years, and it certainly seems, early on at least, like they may have another solid hit there with Davison Igbinosun. You mentioned Sonny Styles there, and he was not on our list to talk about in this show, and just in case you're wondering why, it feels like that he's kind of doing exactly what we expected him to. This is someone who we came into the spring thinking this is someone who's going to have to, they're going to have to find a role for him. It still feels like they're going to have to find a role for him. He's still working in the same area that he was before. He's that second string guy on the boundary safety spot behind Lathan Ransom, the bandit position. I don't think anything has materially changed there. So he's not someone who necessarily took a huge step forward. He's just someone who is on the same upward trajectory that we thought about at the beginning of the spring. Someone else who does fit that profile of someone who has maybe taken another step forward, at least in my mind, and maybe Tony's as well, is Denzel Burke. And Denzel Burke is just one of those guys who I keep comping him to J.K. Dobbins, where true freshman year, kind of thrust into the lineup by injury a little bit, was, sort of a surprising starter early on, did pretty darn well as a freshman, maybe a little bit of a step back as a sophomore, or at least not as much progress as you might have expected. And then all spring, you've just been hearing about Denzel Burke and how much work Denzel Burke's been putting in. And this is the kind of time of year when you hear everyone is talking about how this is the hardest year of workouts ever, and it's always the hardest year of workouts ever. But there, at this point, we've done this enough, Tony, where you sort of know, okay, you hear certain things about certain guys, and you keep hearing it from different people, and it's coaches and it's players, and you keep hearing the same thing. Eventually, that means something. And with Denzel Burke entering his third year, what could be a contract year, as he could enter the NFL draft next spring, it just feels like, and based on what we've seen as well, this is potentially a big step forward kind of year for Denzel Burke.
And when you ask people about him, it's not just what they say at times, it's almost how they say it as well. You're like, what's Denzel? And like, oh, Denzel. Like, everybody just slow down and listen. Denzel, like they make it a point to like, this is what I'm going to tell you right now is real. And that's kind of how they're talking about Denzel Burke, where it's not quite hushed tones, but it's real. And, we've seen it. He's always been a very serious guy as well. And I remember talking to him when he was a true freshman, very serious, very matter of fact about what he wanted to do. And to have a season, the first half of a season that didn't go the way you expected. And of course, people just view it as a bad year. It was a bad start to the year. And the bulk of that badness was some miraculous catches by opponents. But he's done everything that you could want him to do this spring. He's been a leader. He's been consistent. I honestly don't even know if I've seen him give up a catch this spring. And I think we've seen more spring than we have in previous springs. And he's been, I think the best thing is he's been available. And as long as he stays healthy, I think that's the key for him right now.
Yeah, last fall was a year where Ohio State's cornerback room really lived out the old saying that the best ability is availability. They just kind of shuffled through guys all season long. Guys couldn't stay healthy. They have so far this spring. You may knock on whatever wooden surfaces near you, but they have so far this spring remained very healthy in that room. And Denzel Burke has definitely been someone who stood out. I could not tell you. I mean, we've watched a good bit of practice this spring, and I don't remember thinking, oh man, Burke really got beat on that play at any point this spring. So yeah, that's one of those things where if he really has taken that next step and does take that, work his way into kind of restarting that Ohio State first round cornerback pipeline that they had going for quite a while, boy, if you just have one of those guys, that makes a big difference. And the practice we got to watch on Friday, boy, that secondary looked pretty darn good. And they're going up against some decent wide receivers. So yeah, that's something that I think is definitely worth keeping an eye on. But if you're looking for a breakout junior season kind of candidate, he would be pretty close to the top of my list. Another guy who in that secondary who has looked pretty darn good this season and really had a little bit of an up and down 2022, but has looked a lot better this spring and maybe just feeling a little more comfortable is Cam Martinez. He is repping with the ones at the nickel position right now. And with Jihad Carter out, we don't know exactly how long, but had a leg injury last week at practice. Now you've got Cam Martinez, pretty clearly the number one at nickel. I think I think they feel pretty good about where he is right now. That he's kind of come a long way, and just feeling more comfortable with the defense. I mean, you asked him about just that, feeling more comfortable with the defense because finally. It's another year playing in the same defense for the first time in basically forever.
Yeah, it's the first time he's done it. It's the first time I think any of these Buckeyes have done it. And the opportunity you're no longer learning the defense. You know the defense. Now you can make it your own. Now you can excel in it. Before you're just trying to play it. Now you can own it. And he's really done that this spring. And I know because I see it, you tweet about how well he's doing, you write about how well he's doing, and there are people who don't, or almost refusing to believe because they saw him struggle at times last year. Nobody saw that more than Cameron Martinez. Like, he saw what happened to him last year. Last year he was banged up a bit, had some injuries, which everybody has had. And so the question is, can anybody stay healthy and not have to go through those injuries? But they're healthy now. He's experienced. He understands what is being asked, and like you said, Tom, the confidence is there. We saw him grab a pick six on Friday, step in front of a pass, just get his fingertips on it from about 15, 20 yards, take it in. And we've seen him, I've seen him make plays against Marvin Harrison. I've seen him make plays against other guys. Now, Marvin Harrison also got him on Friday for about a 20-yard gain, but that's going to happen. Now, I think right now he's playing as well as he's playing as well as Tanner McAllister did last year. I don't know, last spring at least. I don't know if people will see that as a compliment. Like he certainly does not look like he's lost out there at all.
No, it feels like he and pretty much everyone else in that back end of the defense is just a little more comfortable than they were last year. On that practice on Friday, that secondary looked pretty darn good. They controlled a lot of the downfield passing. There were a lot of checkdowns, there were some throwaways. That's and this is a lot of that was in 7-on-7, so there's no pass rush necessarily getting in the quarterback's face. That's just the secondary covering. And for a secondary that had some of the issues they had last year, that's probably an encouraging sign. Cam Martinez is a big part of that. The last guy I wanted to talk about is someone who is currently repping with the third team, which is something that I think on its face you would look at that and go, well, how far could he have come really then? And the answer is, well, his name is Malik Hartford, and he lost his black stripe on Friday. And anytime you lose your black stripe on Friday, that tells during the course of the spring, you're not losing it in fall camp. You're not losing it after the start of the season. You're losing it during the spring. That tells me you are someone that the coaches already trust. He's repping with the third team right now, so he's not someone who you necessarily are projecting to be a starter by any means this fall. But he sure seems to me, Tony, like someone who is this year on the special teams contributor kind of track, and then potentially a year away from trying to take a much bigger role on the defense.
Yeah, and as a guy who's 6'2"-ish, maybe a little bit taller than that, can play either the boundary or the field. Could be your free safety or your strong safety. And I've seen him at both this spring. And this is a guy who is, as you said, he's a true freshman coming in, earning his stripes, losing his black stripe, a big hitter in high school, learning to be more under control in college, and doing exactly what you're being asked to do. That seems to be every time a freshman loses his black stripe in the spring, you ask the coach, what did it take? He's like, well, he listens and he does what we ask him to do. And is that all? It's like that's all you need to do to get a C in high school. You just listen and just do what you're told. But the difficulty for freshmen in doing that is you can try, but you can't always keep up. And the ability to keep up and take the classroom to the field, which is a favorite saying of Ryan Day, when they tell you what's going on in the meeting room, and then you can apply that to the field and take that to the field when you can correct your mistakes. I think these are all signs of mature freshmen. And when you're losing your black stripe in spring, that is also a sign of maturity.
Yeah, and correcting your mistakes and being able to take teaching, that's also, I understand what is going on around me. I understand what they're asking me to do. I probably understand why they're asking me to do that, which shows a mastery of the defense that you would not necessarily expect from someone in the spring of his true freshman season. So again, no one is projecting him to start this fall, but he's someone who, if you lose your black stripe during the spring, you are already ahead of where I thought you would probably be, except for maybe Carnell Tate. Maybe we thought Carnell Tate would be in that role, but Jelani Thurman, Malik Hartford, those are guys who both lost their black stripes on Friday, and that is a pretty significant and meaningful thing in terms of their long-term development and their futures at Ohio State. So there you go. There are your 6 guys who are maybe made the most of their springs so far on the defensive side of the ball. We will have much more coming up this week as we count down to the Ohio State spring game on Saturday. We'll be talking to Ryan Day on Wednesday, and then we'll have, I'm sure, some pregame and postgame and live shows and all the fun stuff you've come to know and expect from us coming up this week at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, BuckeyeHuddle.com, and also youtube.com/CFB Playbook. That is our college football playbook YouTube channel. It is related to Buckeye Huddle and is something that was staffed by the folks that you know and love from Buckeye Huddle, talking about some more schematic stuff, making you a little bit of a smarter football fan. I'm guessing there will be a good bit of stuff on there after they have a whole spring game to break down. So you're going to want to be subscribed there. Again, youtube.com/CFB Playbook. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.